Yeah, good. So thank you again for joining this session. This session is brought to you by InQuest Research and Consulting in Kenya, a company that is endearing to transform the organizations and also readers through mindset transformation. And our little focus is always to make sure at least we have evidence-based transformation within our organization that is producing value, impact, and that impact should be sustainable. I think long is gone when we used to focus so much on growth, and I know had that discussion for many years. If you lead most of the strategic plans for many organizations, they'll always talk about profitable growth. And I think that space has been disrupted so much that we are no longer so much drowned into the quest for growth, because you've discovered if you just follow some few principles and some things that are key elements in organizational success, you will automatically grow. So growth is quite very easy. It can be predictable because you just need to make sure at least key organizational elements are all adhered to, and automatically growth become an outcome. But one of the biggest issues we have currently is the concept around sustainability for the impact. So it's not just the growth. Are we making impact in the marketplace? And is that impact sustainable? Now, that's a very big discourse, because now when you talk about sustainability or impact, you're presuming that then whatever the impact we are leaving behind in organizations as readers can be able to outlive our existence, meaning can go beyond your lifetime. We have seen leaders who join organizations, whether they are CEOs, C-level executives, and when they leave with their own DNA, and there's no sustainability for the organizational impact that they brought in. So question is, as HR, people who weave the DNA of organization, how do we facilitate that process for impact sustainability? I know that's a digress discourse, but those are some of the things, of course, we cannot shy away from discussing as HR readers, because we are at the heart and at the center of organizational transformation and impact. So today's conversation is around employee experience. This is just one of the key elements that is very critical for every HR to focus on. And I'll be maybe giving some few experiences that we get in the market. We are all learning, and therefore, as we do consultancy, as we do training, as we engage leaders, we keep learning new things, we keep observing new concepts, and we keep seeing new way people and organizations are approaching these focus. So I'm going to walk through some few things, but I would like this session to be more interactive, so I'll be posing questions to you. So kindly let's be generous to share. There's no one monopoly of knowledge. So some of the things, of course, I will be laying out is just to lay a ground for conversation. So if you have something that you may want to share on what is happening within your organization, kindly make sure at least you put it on the chat. And also we can also be able to give you some few minutes towards the end to share your experiences. And we learn from each other as iron sharpen iron. For those who have just joined, my name is Gabriel Nyamo, Chief Transformation Officer from InQuest Research and Consulting. And we are today talking about modeling an evidence-based employee experience and employee engagement. So you'll allow me just to go straight into the conversation. If you have questions, kindly put them on the chat. We are going to have some time we can spend later in the session, maybe towards the end of the hour, to attempt to address some of those areas if we get some time left ahead of us. So I'm going to share some few slides, but I don't want it to be more monotonous in terms of just sticking on the slides. It is just to anchor conversation on the discussion today. Now, I know most of us have already been doing what we call employee experience, employee engagement. Currently, people talk about employee empowerment programs within organizations. And I don't know how that experience has been. Has it worked? Many years back, when especially personally joined the corporate world, we used to, I won't mention the name of those two companies. There are two companies, especially almost 20 years ago. There are more multinational companies that we all really desired to work for, or to work with. I think that's a better word. We don't work for, we work with, we partner with. And this organization has a very strong employee experience models that if you meet their either managers or their officers or their leaders somewhere, maybe on a Friday cocktail or over a networking forum, and you just having a conversation with them, they don't need to tell you where they work. They don't need to tell you. And there are two companies I know who are very strong. And whenever we used to do benchmarking 20 years ago, those are some of the top companies that you first of all go to pick how they are doing their talent onboarding, how they are doing the talent acquisition, how they are doing their induction process, how they're the entire employee life cycle, their EVPs and many other components. That's the only company we used to go and study. And it was very phenomenal because they had a formula. And in my own, curiosity, I happened to have engaged some of these companies just trying to research and understand, how do you do this? How do you facilitate that your employees, just within 1 year or 2 years, you can almost tell they work for you, even when they don't disclose where they work for? And I think I'm starting that so that I pose a question for all of us. To what extent have been able to build a very definitive, predictable employee experience that actually shapes and wins the employee commitment, the discretion, which I know we call the employee engagement, and you can actually see it evidence within them. I think for lack of a better explanation, we know the story of Peter of the Bible when Jesus was being crucified, and in one of the evenings when he was to betray Jesus, some guys came and told him, "I think you look like you are with that man." And I think I call that, it's part of that he had already influenced them that they almost look like him. I know that comes out strongly. So to what extent have we built definitive, predictable employee experience process that actually, when we sample part of your leadership, your managers, your supervisors, we can almost find them smelling like the XYZ company. They have the true convictions of your purpose, especially your organizational purpose, within themselves, and they can see how they fit in. It's a question for all of us, because if that is not there, then it means that we still have a long way to go in terms of that journey. And that's why this process is very important, to be able to have this discourse as a HR team. So kindly feel free to share some of the experiences in your spaces on how you are modeling evidence-based employee experience and engagement. Many years back, we used to consider employee engagement as the key thing. But I think the last, especially 5-7 years, we've come to see, beside engagement always will manifest as an outcome. So it comes at the end. It's as a result of. Now, when something is an outcome, it is quite very hard to predetermine it. So you need to look at what are the causes, what are the inputs that the lives or the drivers for employee engagement. That's why now we've moved away from employee engagement per se to focus on what are the key drivers, the levers that drives employee engagement. And one of them is actually the employee experience. So again, I think I don't need to introduce myself again. So Gabriel Nyamo, my purpose coach, I think the way many people will call me out there. My main intention is always to be able to help people to live what we call fit living. Fit living means fulfilling, impactful, and transcending lives. So living beyond just survival, living beyond just earning a life and all that, but also living for something that will give you fulfillment, impactful, meaning impacting people around you, and also transcending. And that's what you call purpose-led lives. Now, so we'll talk about some global outlook on some of the things we have picked in the market. Then we'll go into the employee experience in terms of definitions and the paradigm shift on how we are moving away from what we call employee investment to what we call a shaping approach or modeling approach. And then you're going to make some few announcements towards it. Now, I bounced on this, which I know most of us, for those who are keen on LinkedIn threads and all that, most likely you have already encountered it somewhere. And this is a very critical observation that was made by the Executive Search Review newsletter, which they are very strong on the LinkedIn, thought leadership. And they make a comment here, which they say that mission-driven organizations have become even more attractive places to work today. And this is where they're saying, due to having a purpose-driven focus, a meaningful and enduring reason for being that aligns with long-term needs of community. Now, we all know that we are moving away from what we call profit-centered organizations to what we call purpose-led organizations. People are fed up just every conversation, it's about profit. People are fed up and employees are getting fed up where every meeting, every conversation is about the profit that we've brought. But the conversation is now shifting towards the impact and the meaning that employees find on what they do on a daily basis. So that's paradigm shift, we call it, shifting away from profit-oriented to what you call purpose-oriented organizations. Apparently, many organizations have not been able to be very clear about their reason for being. It is very easy to justify the numbers and say we wanted to drive 50 billion. But it's another to justify why or so what. So if you say this is what we want to bring, and that becomes the emphasis in every conversation, let me tell you, within 2-3 year cycle, people lose morale. Because the question is, yes, we have brought in profit, so what? That next question is very dangerous. So, and I know most of organizations in terms of our communications, our even the way we drive incentives is towards performance. You know, are we producing results? And the results here, we may define them from maybe profit, our top line numbers, our bottom line numbers, and all that, which has dominated the boardrooms in the past. But is that sustainable? Not really. In fact, to make the matter worse again, research done currently, especially recent 3 years, so it is trying to kind of see the trend on what we call organizational sustainability, how an organization can be able to sustain an impact in future. Now, this is one of the observations where organizations have been able to spell out the convictions of why they exist to their leaders, their managers, and the employee. They have a tendency to be able to transition, a kind of to go beyond the current leadership tenure, even to the second and third generation. And that's what we call sustainability issue. I don't know whether now we are talking about ESG, goals, sustainability, and all that. They are all anchored into how you've been able to weave the sense of convictions, ownership within the organization, that everybody know why that organization exists. Initially, what we used to have of, and especially for family-led business, and I'm sure some of us may be working for those what you call family-led enterprises, you hand over your balance sheet and the income statement to your second generation or your children and children. I happen to have met an organization that is 300 years old, based in Singapore. And I remember talking to one of the founders, not the founder, but kind of now the generation of founders, because he's now founders within the current generation, who happen to be in the 5th generation. So you can imagine running a business and it's now being managed by the 5th generation of the family from the founder, 300-year-old business, and still strong and among the leading. Now, I don't know whether some of our businesses, organizations we are working for, apart from those who are government, you know, government can also just be there just because it's a government. But for those especially that are in the competitive world, I don't know to what extent they can be able to go beyond even 2 generations. It could be very difficult. Now, question is, are your organization being able to spell out this and embed employee experience? Because that's a conversation for today. How do you make sure the employee experience is able to, first of all, make those employees understand the reason for the existence for these organizations? Very critical question. Now, McKinsey, who I know most of us love thought leadership, and therefore maybe this may persuade you in terms of getting some statistics from some of the authorities, and many others, of course, that I can list here. McKinsey themselves talks about talent alignment. They talk about that employees, when they find the work to be meaningful, their performance improves by that 3%. Meaning when an employee is able to assign and associate value on what they do to the organizational value and also to themselves. That's kind of a pendulum issue. They're able to see this is what is my value and alignment, and this is how I contribute to the organizational success. If they're able to see that, they're likely to improve their performance by that 3%. Now, honestly speaking, just as HR people here, if you can be able to improve employee performance by that 3%, which other hack are you looking for? Honestly, that's just a question for all of us. That if you can be able to know that if my employee find meaning, not salary increments, not benefits, not EVP. We've done those employee value proposition for many years. I think I've done it for the last 15 years. Even the generating EVP statements, we are no longer shining there. So going beyond that to make sure the employee is able to find meaning, is able to find that they can connect the impact they make. It's first of all meaningful to them and also meaningful to the organization. They can improve the performance by 33%. If that is the hack, my question for all of us is, what then else do we require? Because this is the thing, if you can improve performance by 33%, that's like a third. It is more valuable than adding new branches. So who have the performance answer? It's the HR leader. But apparently, sometimes I think we put ourselves in the back end. We put ourselves in the backside such that the people driving our businesses are the CEOs, are the CFOs, are the chief commercial officers. And I always tell my HR, because I do a lot of HR executive leadership coaching, guys, you have the hack yourself. You are the one, actually, the organizational performance. You should actually be the person going out there and tell the CEO, we are going to increase performance by 30%. We are going to improve our bottom line by this. You have the opportunity to do that. But the problem we have is we have always reduced ourselves to the back end. We are facilitators. We are enablers. We can understand that. We are business enablers. We facilitate culture, competencies, all those alignment. We have the right people so that we have the right resources for the right time in the right numbers. You know, all those things. But let me tell you, we actually have the hack for organizational success. If at all, we're able to understand it. Now, McKinsey continues to say that they are 75% more committed to the organization and 49% less likely to leave. Issues of attrition, issues of employee retention, commitment and discretion to work, where they don't work because they have an appraisal, where they work not because they have a boss who is harsh, who is going to ask them for reports, where they drive their own performance and set their own bar and even probably outperform their own standard. All that is anchored by employees being able to find meaning in what they do. Question is, how do we build a compelling case in our employee experience journey such that they find meaning? Not just the EVP statement, where you can calculate and see the investment that you're making. We call that employee investment approach. And you're going to see the paradigm shift between employee investment and the employee experience and shaping journey. Now, our question for us here is, does the organization measure purpose alignment index for your employees? I would like to give you a second probably to respond to that question kindly. Is your organization actually currently being able to, or has it been doing what we call the employee or purpose alignment index? Just put a yes or a no on the chat. We want just to have a feel of what is happening. Just put a Y or an N for that particular question. We'll give you 10 seconds to continue. Does the organization measure purpose alignment index? This is the extent to which there is what you call organizational purpose and individual purpose. Do you measure that anywhere? I'm sure you have done employee surveys, you've done your employee engagement surveys, and many other things I know we do, HR surveys. Is there a metric in all that, despite just maybe the employee NPS score, the employee satisfaction index, you know, all those index I know we measure? Does the organization measure purpose alignment index? The extent to which your employee align their purpose and the organizational purpose. 2 seconds, I think we can move on. It's a status check question that is good for all of us, because this is how we start now shaping our reality of how do we make sure at least we are evidence-based. We are not just, driving and sending communications, doing research after another research, doing benchmarking after another benchmarking, but sometimes we are not finding value in what we do. Thank you so much for the various feedback that are coming. I really appreciate your genuine and your vulnerable feedback. Good. Let's continue. Let's talk about employee experience definition. As in today, it's a cut and laser, so we are not going to go a lot of depth, but we hope that we can do this again and again and again so that we can progress. And we'll be glad, of course, to share how we can be able to help each other and support each other in this journey. Now, the greatest problem is how we define employee experience, because an employee experience is not defined from what you do yourself as a HR or as a leader. It is defined from what the employee themselves internalize. Now, that you believe with me is a big challenge because if you're defining it from what the employee themselves are finding or they internalize, and yes, sometimes you may not have control of them. So that's the next feedback you're going to tell me. How do I control what employees feel? But unfortunately, good and bad news is that is employee experience. It is how they perceive the reality as it should be from their side. So it's how employees internalize and interpret the interaction they have with the organization. And it is consistent, meaning throughout the entire tenure of the experience. So it's not just a one-time thing. It's accumulation of many things. That's why sometimes you may pay them bonus and they still have bad experience. What is the problem? It's their own interpretation. So for the people who have done psychology, the only way then to hack that dilemma is actually around what you call framing. You may have to understand the employee flame. What are they using as a frame of reference to interpret the interpretation the way it is? Otherwise, you will pay them bonus, you'll do the salary increments, you'll embed performance based increments, and we do those a lot in consultancy assignments. You will take them for, do town halls, and make sure they have lunch and a kitchenette where they are eating in your premises, economics in terms of the work environment, invest heavily in their onboarding journey, and still sometimes they don't get or to give you a positive employee experience. And I think that's the dilemma, because it's a context issue. Because I can give you something. We were doing some consulting for an organization. We were trying to do what you call employee benefit uptake ratio. And we went there and we found these are financial organizations. They had so many benefits. I think there are like almost 9 what you call employee loans, personal loans, laptop loans, mortgage loans, and all those things. Almost 9 of them. Then medical covers, so many different whatever, sub-remits within it. A lot of, the whole total reward aspect. Then we said, okay, let's take a minute. Let's test the perception the employee have on these benefits. And I don't know whether you have done this, and this is where data comes in. And we started testing, okay, let's take the mortgage loans. Now we discovered those mortgage loans and the prot loans and LAD loans and all those things and development loans, they were only enjoyed by a certain subset of the employees. And mostly they were the senior management. Yet there were hardly 100 of them. Of almost 800 plus employees are non-management. Only 100 employees are enjoying that benefit called, they can buy a plot and they can build and put a house or buy a complete unit out of it. Now, what is the value of having a benefit that actually doesn't benefit people? People even don't take it. And when we did a bit of research and some perception and all that, the non-management employees felt that benefit was a trap. I don't know. I'm sure I'm speaking to people who are already in the corporate world. These are the things that you're doing there. So you create a benefit thinking that it's for retention. Employee refuse to take it, and it appears there in your HR manual. And you restate even during induction. You give socialization on how to enjoy the employee benefits. Yet, they don't enjoy those benefits. Now, a benefit that is not enjoyed, is it a benefit? Is it a benefit? No. Because a benefit, of course, if it accrues benefit, meaning people are enjoying it because they cannot benefit if they don't enjoy it. If they don't take that package, it means they will not even taste the value intended. And therefore, you have just a list or a policy, very attractive policies, but has no value on the ground. When we tested, of course, the employees were saying they consider those benefits as a trap. What do we mean by a trap? An employer trap, of course, to keep them captive, not to go anywhere. And they are true in what they think, because that's a perception issue. But as a HR, actually, you have a very genuine interest. You want these people to stay in their own houses, not to pay rent, convert their rent into, mortgages they can be. You have very genuine interest. But the perception of the employee is the one that determines whether even that intention you have is going to bear fruits. If they take it as a trap, unfortunately, that benefit is not going to add value. And this is where I think we have a dilemma as HR. How do we make sure at least we move towards modeling that right perception to the employees? As I said earlier, that employee experience drives employee engagement. It's not the other way around. Employee engagement is an outcome. This is a discretional effort employees give us, where they work just because they really want to work, and we win their commitment towards work. Employee experience on the other side, as I said, is how they interpret the interaction with the organization. Of course, the employees' expectations are changing. So this, again, is part of this, and I know this is a slide that some of us may have seen in our previous webinars, but it's a very fundamental way for us to be able to understand the market. Number one is, employees are trying to see, are you empowering me? Or are you making me a slave on an extra pair of a robot that can work for you? Is what you're doing geared towards my empowerment? Or is it something what you call extractive? Extractive means you want just to draw out of me. And if an employee feels that you just want to extract from them, let me tell you what they do. They will withdraw and they will give you 110% of their potential. It's a big, big conversation. So one of the things that employees are expecting is, I want to feel that this interaction I have with the company is empowerment driven. So which empowerment programs are you having? Again, my own research in one of the companies actually we were consulting for, we were able to convert actually loans. Those loans, we were telling them, when you take this land and property or house loan, it is not to just work for us for 20 years. In fact, we don't mind working for 3 years. It's not about the longevity of the time you spend. It's the impact you make. But we want you to be empowered first so that you can serve. So you put the employee first. So you're telling them, we want you to have a house so that you have peace of mind. And in that peace of mind, you're able to give us more empowerment, more kind of performance, because you have a state of stability. Number two, we want to build your wealth. Now, that's a very different conversation from converting a loan to become wealth. Wealth is like an asset. So where we were able now to kind of have a certain proposition of employee don't see the loan as a loan. They see it as an avenue or as a channel to build wealth. Now, who doesn't want to be wealthy? Who doesn't want to have assets? But then when you do that, what happens is that you have to review your experience in terms even on the rate you give, the process, the method used to calculate interest, and many things, how you recover if people don't repay back, all those things, you have to re-engineer them towards an empowerment-driven benefit, not an extractive, because human beings hate what you call predatory policies. Predatory is where you kind of take an employee as a play. I want to extract from you, not the other way around. Now, we may have good intentions, but as I said, it's the expectation from the employee, which is changing. If we don't make sure that the experience is empowerment driven, they will still see it as an opportunity to extract from them. And what they'll do, they'll never give you full potential. Personalization. This is a critical employee experience thrust, or a thrust for employee experience. To what extent is the experience? Wrong is good. In fact, I was joking with a few of my HR colleagues in the networking forums, and I was telling them, I think we will very soon almost drop these HR manual and policies. Not mean dropping them, but the policies and the manual should only be a very high level guide. But the operationalization of that manual will be personalized, meaning just because you have said for that you will give me sick off or you give me compassionate leave and all that. Yes, it might be there in the policy, but when it comes to dealing with an employee, You may be forced to deal with Gabriel on his own, Joyfrey on his own. I don't know how that contracting will be. Even contracts. I know we love standardization and SOPs, and I understand that best practice. But I think based on how experience is moving, even including working arrangements, I think I also give this story of a company we were working for, and one employee who was poorly performing and was put in PIP was almost fired. And by policy, if you follow the policy, she deserved to be fired. But then the company decided to engage a counselor. The counselor sought, to interact with the employee. And the employee actually, when she was being drilled, she was a lady actually, it was observed that she have a morning issue. A morning issue means she doesn't boot very easily. She takes like 4 hours after waking up to really be productive. And what this company did, that time is many years where we didn't have flexi hours. I know right now you can tell me about flexi hours and all that, and flexible working arrangement. That time it wasn't there. Over 15 years ago, there was nothing like that. In fact, you appear very odd. But this company was able to personalize her working hours to report at almost 9, 10 in the morning and leave at 7. And within 2 years, that employee was among the top 10 performing employees in that organization. They had to bend the policy to accommodate the employee. And that's the experience, because that by itself makes the employee feel, yes, I can have no excuse not to deliver my commitment. I know we have been talking about some of these even in many workplaces that I engage, and I can tell you the agility to bend some of the policies and the rules we have in HR. It's almost like a cut on stone. They are like the 10 commandments. You cannot break. And I hope I'm not stepping on everybody, but I have seen organizations that you say we are agile, we are adaptive, we are flexible, but on the ground, when you go and assess to what extent actually they can personalize the experience, almost zero. But it's there in the policy and in strategy, initiatives that we are moving towards agility and all that. If we don't allow flexibility, if we don't allow adaptability, we are going to lose the next target. Of course, on demand and interpleasance, employees want to feel that when they need a certain, whether it could be a benefit or a request and all that, it can be attended to real time. So long is gone where, you have to create, like I know we talk about benefits, a whole benefit regime where you force everybody to enjoy the benefit just because it's in the policy. So you force me to enjoy 5% pension, 10% interest on mortgage, medical covers of 5 million, all those inpatient, outpatient of 100,000, all those packages. And they are like just a one pack that fits all. Wrong is that gone. Employees want a flexibility of how can you create an opportunity such that I can enjoy a benefit when I need it, not when you provide it. It's about when I need it. And that's why we are moving out to something we call flexible benefit regime models. And I don't know how many of us probably have implemented that. Maybe that will be the next poll for those who are currently still following me. I would like to have an idea. Has the organization implemented a flexible benefit framework? And how is it working? Could you just put a yes or a no? I would like to get a feel of that. Has the organization implemented a flexible benefit? Now, let me give you a description of it because some of us may not understand how it works. Instead of giving one benefit which cut across all even generations and all cadres, the flexible benefit policies is where you will come up with buffets, kind of bouquets, call it benefit bouquets. So you'll have a bouquet where you say you can enjoy 5% pension here, 10% on mortgage, several, laptop loan. Then you have, that is bouquet one. Then you have a second bouquet which you say, here, instead of 5% on 10% on mortgage on the other benefit package, here I'll give you 18%. But I will increase your, maybe another direct benefit, like probably maybe what you call like an education bonus or education bursary. So you may have different combinations, but the total cost of each of those benefits is the same to the company. But you can spend the same $1 in different combinations. And that's a big, big thing to do because it requires a lot of data, evidence, because you need to study what Generation Z loves and what little will be more valuable to them, what baby boomer loves and what is valuable to them, and then create combination of packages that benefit each one of them in a certain measure that then they feel they get the value. So I want to get from you, how many of us have been able to implement a flexible benefit framework within your organization? Just put a yes or a no or a Y or no, YN into the chat. And we are going to sample those later towards the end. Give you 5 seconds. 5, I think 2 seconds just to put a Y or a, good. If you have implemented any flexible benefit, good, good. Perfect, that's good. Thank you so much for those feedback, over 20 feedback that has come. The other one is what you call differentiation. We all know that we are not living in a certain homogeneous system. So I can just get the same utility for a service in the next door. If I'm working for you, I am just a chat away to getting another job elsewhere. So you have to really prove that you are differentiated in your own experience, such that there's a reason why I should stick and partner with you as an employer. So if there is no differentiation, definitely, of course, employees don't find value. The last one, of course, is impact-led. Now, this is where I tied this to the earlier chart that I showed you, which was done by the newsletter in the LinkedIn and also the McKinsey, the statistics around finding meaning. Employees want to work for organizations that are contributing to a certain impact in the community. And very soon, you are likely to struggle when you're doing interviews. And that's my prediction, where employees will be asking you that question. What value does the company or that the organization give to the market or to the industry or to the society or to the community? It's going to be a head question, because the things we focus most in organizations are things to do with the profits, cost savings, all those, operational excellence. Question is, so what? So if the organization does not have a compelling case on how it can be able to cascade the impact model, and the employees are aligned to that, meaning they actually know how they contribute to it. If the organization is not impact-led and the experience is not modeled towards facilitating that, definitely, you're also going to struggle. And mostly at onboarding. I'm sure some of us have already interacted with this generation, millennia and the Gen Z guys. These guys will ask you any question. They're very vulnerable. So, okay, you're working in a bank. Okay, you want to hire me. Okay, so what does the bank start for? Oh, we start for maybe to increase disposable income for our people who save with us the money, their wallet and share of value in that wallet. And then the next question, Gen Z will ask you, so what and why? Those questions are very tough. And you may discover if the organization is not impact-led and purpose-led, it's very hard to explain the why you do what you do. So these are 4 dynamics of changing employee expectations. So question is for all of us in terms of how are we making sure at least all these 4 dimensions are addressed in what we do in terms of the modeling employee experience. They have to be data. There has to be data support all this, because without data then and without evidence, you cannot model these imperatives. Now, some of the perspective again in the global outlook, HR leaders have invested in the past in what you call the workplace. The WWW, we have heavily invested, yet we are not seeing value. The approximate given is, of course, that we spend approximately over $2,000 every year per employee. Approximately, I know this will be about 300-something thousand. So imagine you're spending almost $500,000 every year to invest heavily in what you call EX improvements. They are called investments. Either the worker, that is the employee, sending them for training and all that. The work is, of course, where you may probably deploy technology and other things to improve the work and efficiency. Then you have workplace, where you change the economics, you paint the buildings, you have nice working spaces and all that. All those in the workplace related. You're spending a lot of money every year to invest in what you call employee experience improvement. But only 13% of such, even employees, get fulfilled or satisfied with the employee experience despite the heavy investment. We are building a case here. So despite us spending a lot of money only 13% of the employees still consider that they are fully satisfied. You can change a nice office, nice ergonomics, flashy working laptops and tablets. You know, the Wi-Fi is top-notch in terms of connectivity for internet. You know, all those things. All those are employee experience improvement things. But despite investing in all those, only 13% of the employees still feel that this is really fulfilling to me. So where is the disconnect? In 2 years, the investment we make, 82% more, you have to invest 82% more every year to improve the employee experience. A lot of investment. It's actually costly. No wonder we are always in loggerheads with our CEOs and our executives, because they ask, last year you came to me to give, I don't know, some nice tablets to improve the workstations, all those things, to set employees for team building and organize town halls and luncheons, and thank God it's Friday, TGIFs and all that, and you spend a lot of money. And yet probably they are not seen. And every year, actually, it become escalation. So whatever you spent last year, you're going likely to spend more this year. So question is that sustainable? Not really. And therefore, there's a quest for modeling approach. Modeling approach is how we understand. This has to go to a bit of psychology, how we actually be able to model employee experience, not necessarily from the investments, but more from influencing their perception. Now, influencing perception may have nothing to do with creating a heavy infrastructure, buying new assets, taking you to academies and executive training. I think I was sharing with some team somewhere, a place where an organization took their employees to UK, especially senior management, to UK for a leadership program. We love all these, top-notch, best-in-class models. So you take people to UK, to Harvard. And these guys, the companies paid almost 38 million to take this leadership up there. So they thought that when they come back, they are going to come and they'll come in with this big bang and these, top-notch kind of best-in-class models to transform the organization. Guess what? Waited for 2 years after they come, 3 years, no change. Heavy investment, that 8 million disappeared for taking people for very executive training program. And I'm sure some of us, we're investing in so many things, executive coaching, spend a lot of money, but sometimes we are not still getting value. We need to shift towards, instead of investment, we shift towards something we call the modeling approach. And that's why HR right now, we are forced even to understand psychology, the psychoanalytics part of our human being and the behavior and the mindset. Because when you deal with that, you can model perception even with literal investment, instead of spending too much money for things that are not sustainable. So HR have continued to invest heavily on the EX improvement to increase satisfaction, but still not getting the value. Why? The reason is escalating expectation. Now, we all know, and I'm sure I have experts in compensation and benefits here, the type of Akina Joyfrey here. We all know very well that when you meet a need, it will no longer become a need again. So somebody will cry for a salary increment. The moment you increase that salary, that need is no longer a need. They will actually expect again more. So if your work is to invest, let me tell you, keep investing every year, because there's always escalation. They demand a laptop loan, you give them the laptop loan. Tomorrow, they will demand something else. So if you respond to employee experience through investments, my friend, you're going to invest forever. And it's going to be escalating to a place where it will never be sustainable. Cost ballooning, some of the things we invest in things are becoming more costly. Therefore, we can't sustain this. And then minimum scalability over time. So once done, so what? I think that's what I was trying to mention in another one. Once you achieve it, so what? So if you come up with an AVP model, employee value proposition, once you deliver it, so what next? You end up kind of getting into a roller coaster where every you have to spend more. Yet, you are also not getting more from them. In fact, there is a 4 or 5 stage investment scalability. In the beginning, the first stage is always where we invest in putting basic and largely operational building blocks in place. You make sure our employees have the right tools, like the tools of work. They have clarity of their job description and all that. Those are just the fundamental, the basics. Maybe you move to stage 2 over time, you focus on enhancing, improving the employees' work, okay? So here you might employ technology such that they are not doing mundane work, like reconciliations and very, non-human centered work environments. So you improve, you enhance the work itself. Then that stage, you might get into what we call specialized approach, where your aim is deriving certain segment of employees. You want to derive your Gen Z, your Gen X, your Gen Y, but creating some small scalable packs. You can have a Gen Z Friday, whatever, bars or something like that. Very scalable, but also very segmented. So you break down your employees into various cadres, either generational based or gender based or diversity, whichever diversity you may consider. So at that level, of course, you invest heavily on a very small granular component. But then there's part which is always neglected, which is where you get the purpose-led approach, where your investment is in towards aligning the employee purpose to organizational purpose, nothing beyond that, so that they can find meaning on what they do. If you do number 1 to 3 without number 4 over time, you still don't get value. And our focus is towards moving to that 4th stage in terms of where it's purely purpose-led. Because what happens is that when people find meaning on what they do, guess what? They don't need a job description. They don't need an appraisal, performance appraisal. They don't need a boss to kind of hit at their back that bring these results. No, they become self-led, and their journey is self-driven because they find meaning of what they do. They are not woken up just because tomorrow they have to attend to an assignment. It's not obligatory. It's not because of obligation. It's because they have a conviction towards the meaning that they contribute towards the organization. And I think our employee experience should be anchored towards that 4th dimension. So we are moving away from investment approach to what we call modeling approach, where we use data. And therefore, we have to keep on measuring. I asked a very good question in the beginning. How many of us even measure that purpose alignment? To what extent are employees aligned to their purpose and to the organizational purpose? How many measure? Because if you don't measure, then there's no way you can control. So you need to measure, you correlate, and of course you predict. And this is where HR analytics come in towards the end of this whole process. So the modeling approach, the research, I think I got this from Gartner, and we are trying to gather our own data also locally here. Modeling approach premium. What is the value of modeling? The value of modeling is that it improves employee satisfaction by 32%, and it also reduces or lower cost of investment by 32%. You spend less when you do modeling. There's an organization that, of course, I was working with some few years ago, not working, but as a consultant, of course. And they're very nice approach in terms of employee experience. They made a culture such that when the employees come in the morning, between the manager and the employee, the conversation they have is purely around, okay, let me take one step backwards. In the beginning of the year, when you're doing goal setting, beside performance goal setting, they will set goals, manager and employee, which are not necessarily in the appraisal scorecard, but they will have a session to set goals around employee personal achievement, nothing to do with the JD, personal achievement, where you'll say, I want to come out of debt. That's a very vulnerable conversation. Many people will not set such a goal in the employee relationship, but it's a very vulnerable goal. I want to come out of debt. I want to stop a bad relationship. And I hope you see what I mean. I don't mean these are the ones of finishing an MBA. I mean, anybody will set those. I want to finish an MBA. I want to do a project management course. Forget about those ones. They will go to more very deep, vulnerable goals. I want to marry right. I want to get a spouse who, support my goal. Very vulnerable. But by the time they reach there is because they have built maturity of the manager-employee relationship. You don't do such kind of a thing if the managers are not empowered. Otherwise, they're going to take things very personal. Because if I share with you, I want to get married and you're my boss, chances are, of course, you may take that goal as, different tangent. So what they did is, of course, they allowed some vulnerability, but of course, they had to train the managers first. Now, what happens is this. Every week, and almost in very informal conversation, very informally, the manager will have some coaching conversation, allow those vulnerable. How are you doing well? How are you doing with your debt? Are you struggling on any area to come out of this debt? Are you certainly paying them? Have you even, first of all, written all the debt? And there's nothing personal. You're making, because whether they share with you or not, that's a reality they are going through. They're already in debt. And when somebody is in debt and they're in distress, they can never give you performance. So the employee feel, I am at home. first of all, I have a safe space. In fact, I forgot to say, one of the biggest employee experience thrust, if you can note it somewhere and write it in a pen and paper, is creating a safe space for the employee to be vulnerable. If I can underscore that and forget anything else about this webinar, is actually that. Establishing a safe space for the employee to be vulnerable. You can write that and underscore that. Because when the employee feel vulnerable, they feel safe, they feel secure. They don't no longer view the workplace as a place where somebody is extracting for them. Somebody will be weaponizing. Sometimes some of us, we weaponize either the policies or employee conversations. When they find a safe space, let me tell you, when they get vulnerability, they can do anything that you want them to do. And that's the biggest issue. So if you focus on some of these things, you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money, giving them all these perks, and which cost us a lot, which you call investment approach. We think by pampering, and that's what we do even in parenting. You think by taking your child to very executive place, affording very executive education, you think that is going to transform them? Some of us who are parents, you tell me, it doesn't work that way. They could actually enjoy the same benefits, but maybe a more scalable benefit, not costly, and you get to create the next president. You can get the next CEO from such an experience. And you can invest heavily in your child, but let me tell you still, even make sure they drive to school, they are driving the best car to school, and you get a drunkard out of that experience. That's unfortunate. And that's what happens even in the workplace. We sometimes think investing with these flashy things, to invest with the employees, buy them uniforms, the uniforms, all those things. I don't mean we don't do them, but make sure that at least they are what matters. They are the things that really matters to that employee experience. Otherwise, they'll just become a cost and you'll not sustain them. So employee engagement, of course, we know what it is. I am speaking people who understand this. So employee discretionary effort based on contribution they are making. But that engagement has been declining on the last 10 years. The employee discretionary effort has been declining. So if you ask people, why are you working? In fact, in my coaching, especially purpose coaching, when I ask people, I give them some 10 things in terms of rate for me in order of priority, where you work, where you're working. Guess what? They don't work because they find meaning. Most of them actually tell me, I currently am where I am because I have to earn my life, meaning survival. I have to pay my bills, my education, educate myself, all those things. They barely are working because they can see value on what they do. And that's very unfortunate. So employees are having high expectation for the engagement. So we are now considering employees just the way we also handle customers out there, okay? So we need to make sure we improve the quality of them, of course, to get the right perception from them. Then, due to information disruption, the employee already are empowered. It's like you go to a doctor and you are coughing. By the time the doctor is dispensing for you a drug, you have already Googled the drug. So when you introduce a new policy, you have an employee wellness policy. By the time you're releasing it to the employee already Google employee wellness, and they can see from ChatGPT the best standards. Then they'll compare with what they find online with what you're giving them. Let me tell you, by the time you do that circular, they're already trashing it. Why? They're already empowered. So they are trying to match that with what is existing in the market through the information age. And that is also making it very complex even for us as HR. So we need a mixed grid, of course, with what you call the EVP, as I talked about before. The employee value proposition is changing. The issue of culture modeling, and also then the EX that we are embedding within our employee journey. I know this slide, which I know I've mentioned it in quite a number of our HR analytics. For those who have done HR analytics, I'm sure you have seen this slide many times on how you can, what you call model and correlate talent outcomes to business outcomes. You need to have people to measure the lower part, which is the talent outcomes, but ability to correlate with the business outcomes is more important. Because if you're speaking to your CEO, you know the CEO don't care about attrition. In fact, I tell my HR people when I coach them that never go to the boardroom with any HR metric. Keep it to your department. The board, the CEO don't care about attrition level. And I know we love doing this, but sometimes I ask you, give me your monthly report, give me your board report. And sometimes I see some of those things that we put there. And I say, do you know this is your language, not business language? So attrition, employee satisfaction, keep it to the HR. And when you're doing maybe your HR engagement with your line managers, deal with that now at that level. But in terms of going to report at the top, report business outcomes, because that's what makes sense at the top. If you're talking about improving customer experience journey, sustainability of the business, of course, profitability will still come in there. The business income, what you call impact. If you correlate the talent outcomes to how they impact the organizational metrics, which even the board is considering, or that's their headache, you become relevant. Okay. Now, I know this is something that we need to dissect in another session. Maybe we are planning another session we are going to do on introduction to HR analytics, and maybe in March, I think we have, and I know maybe Rusi is going to share with us, we have an upcoming HR analytics, and we talk about this mostly in that training, the HR predictive HR analytics. You need to make sure your language is on the business outcomes, not necessarily on the talent outcomes. We're going to talk about that maybe in another session. So now let's talk about employee modeling now, which is part of what the reason for this webinar is all about. So the modeling or shaping is the approach to employee experience satisfaction that focuses on influencing their behavior and more so their experience. Using, now notice the three things. I know we don't have a lot of time, but those are the three things in focus. Psychological, which layer we capture, motivational, and social principles. Of course, that requires another whole webinar now. So we are talking about psychological, motivational, what drives them, and social principles. I think I gave, there's an example I often give about a company that I know. It's a financial service company that used to, every year they will take the employees who perform best. I think top, I don't know what kind of cadre they were using. The high-performing employees will be sponsored together with their spouses and their parents for a mini holiday. So you take your parents, your father and mother, and maybe your spouse for a holiday for one night somewhere. Maybe you go to RX Place in Zanzibar there. So every year they will sponsor the high-performing, only the high-performing. Now, I remember talking to one of our friends who used to work in that company, and I was asking them, okay, so who does the appraisal? And the person jokingly told me, you know what? The appraisals were done by our parents. Because if I take your parent for a holiday, because you are a high performer, if next year I don't take that parent for holiday, what happens? The first person who is going to ask you, hey, why didn't you perform? Why are we not going for a holiday? Is actually not your manager. It's your parent. It's your spouse. So you're making when your spouse know that you're not a worker. You're actually not a performer. Anyway, that's just on a light touch. But there's a lot of psychological issue in that model. I don't mean that's a very nice model. I have some reservation around it. But what used to happen is that this guy, let me tell you, used to work. Because they have extended the contract, the contract beyond you as an employee. The contract is now you and your community. So if one day the parents don't go for a holiday, the parents will ask you, hey, Jeffrey, why have you not taken us for a holiday? Then do you remember, can you imagine you telling the parent, I didn't perform well, that's why you didn't qualify? You'll have a very rough stretch for doing that, okay? I don't mean that's a very good thing. Of course, you talk about now, that's an infringement to your space in terms of data protection. Why would you make my spouse know that I'm not a performer? And maybe I shine a lot when I go in the house. Maybe my wife knows I'm the best performer, That was many years ago, it's almost 10 plus years ago. But I was studying the approach in terms of the principles around it. It was a psychological issue. And it's also a motivational because I'm building motivation because if your parents are proud of you, if your spouse are proud of you, it's more impactful than if even your boss tell you congratulations. Now it's your spouse will be telling you, wow, thank you for being a performer. I, the employer, have created another champions of, people who kind of celebrate you. Now, we have to deal with these issues because this is the reality of life currently. We have to deal with psychological, motivational, and social principles in modeling employee experience. Now, only 24% of organizations currently actually have a definitive employee modeling or employee shaping approach. And by definitive, I mean you can even give me a model and a formula where you tell me we do 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and this is the expected outcome in a definitive way. You only call it definitive if at all there's a bit of, it's kind of like a formula you're giving me. Where you tell me that this is when an employee joins, we take them through this, and this is how we model the experience to translate into the psychological and motivation and social realms, and how we engage them in terms of having positive employee experience. So if there's no formula you can give me a kind of a definitive model, then that's kind of become an ad hoc kind of employee experience strategy. Now, this gap is because only 24%, that means 76% of us are not doing it. We are doing the traditional things. It is because, first of all, we have not leveraged on data. And number two, we lack what you call design thinking skill. And that's the biggest skill set for you doing employee experience modeling. You have really to be a design thinker. You have to fabricate design fit for your organization, not copy pasting, fit for your organization, because you have studied your behavior of your employees and you know what kind of will make them be more fulfilled and also something that is more sustainable, unique to you as an organization, not out there. I'll jump this now. The next status check is this, and maybe you can also put for me a next. So a Y or a no, that is a Y or an N on the chart. Does the organization has a definitive EX modeling strategy and a process? Now, those are two things. It can have a strategy like the process. I want where the two are there. You have both an EX model, and I don't mean an MVP. Employee value proposition is slightly different because that goes to the investment. So do you have a definitive EX modeling strategy and a process? A process means that even your managers know it and they are fulfilling it in the interaction with the employee. I'll give you 10 seconds again. Second, meaning it's already institutionalized. If I come and take a manager or a supervisor, they'll tell me what that EX modeling is. They tell me the perception, the mindset that you're modeling that EX model. So does the organization has a definitive, predictable formula for EX modeling strategy and a process mean operationalized already? Maybe 3 seconds. We're almost coming to the end of the webinar because it's not going to be long. We are going to have another version of this in another week or 2 weeks' time. All right, good. Thank you for the feedback. I've received almost 15 or 20 feedback. Thank you so much for that. So for us to implement a definitive EX model, we really need to first of all model expectation for the experience. And what do we say here? How can we shape employees' understanding of the experience they should expect to have? Meaning you have to understand them, meaning you have to have a lot of data correction done because you can't model based on something that you have not understood. So you must understand your core elements of the EX modeling. So first, of course, is to make sure at least you model expectation for the experience. So you make sure at least you understand, like now that example was given about where every beginning of the year, you set very vulnerable personal goals. Now, when people become vulnerable to you, it is very easy to empower them. When people find a safe space, remember the statement I made? One of the greatest hacks for employee actually to be able to be very, easy with you in terms of discretionary performing is actually to create a safe space. This military way of doing things has to stop. This is of quoting a policy. When an employee comes to you, the first thing you quote is, according to Article 10 of our manual, you lose them. This issue of the bossy environment where you kind of managers are like bosses, it is no longer working. In fact, I keep saying with no fear of contradiction that the future has no manager. There's no manager in the future because if everybody is empowered to work and they're given the capability to work, why do you need a manager? To supervise what? If I know what's supposed to work and there's alignment for me and the work I do, I don't need a boss. I don't need a manager. I might need a leader, that's okay, who is coaching me, mentoring, not a manager. Because all the 6 functions of manager, plan, coordinate, supervise, organize, all those things are all disrupted by AI. And I talk about AI a lot, AI disruptions. All those 6 functions of management have been disrupted by AI. So what does a manager left to do? Almost nothing. So we need to understand our employees. That's why psychological issues, motivational issues, social issues are human-centered issues. AI is not taking none of those. That's why I say AI is safe. There's no risk in AI. I don't fear AI as a data scientist because I know what it won't take from our workplace. But the transactional engagement, they're already disrupted by AI. Go beyond correcting expectation. I know we love doing these employee surveys and all that. You need to go beyond just taking expectation, but also modeling from those expectations. So you need to create a vision for the experience employees really want to have. Then number 2, after you do that, of course, make it a daily continuous empowering conversation. So how do you shape the employees to feel about the experience and they are living it real time? Be pleasant. Don't quote what happened last year. Be present at every given time. So we need to continually calibrate it every day and every year. Then finally, of course, we model the memory of the experience such that they can be able to live with the memory beyond the experience. That means beyond the tenure. Can your employee tell about the memorable experience 10 years after they have left working with you? If they can't do that, then you have not done enough. If you can't really, an employee can't articulate, oh, when I was working with this organization 20 years ago, if I can't relate that memory right now, 10 years after, that experience wasn't impactful. So it's a big work here. And this means we have to be very deliberate and intentional. That's why we currently are developing what we call EX strategies. Besides coming up with the human capital strategic plan, which is okay, the HR strategy, part of the biggest component of that, besides the other issues of talent development and all that, is actually modeling employee experience. So we need big data analytics to do this. We also need to have design thinking skills and agility because we have to be adaptive to the changing environment that are all changing every day in our work experiences. I want to park there, but let me finish with some few announcements. Then I can have a 10 minutes Q&A session as we wind up today's forum. And one of the things that we are doing currently, this part of an assignment, is that, of course, we are offering free diagnostics. There's an assessment that we do that is able to even answer some of the questions I was asking you about, like, do you measure purpose alignment, purpose alignment index? So we have a free engagement that we have. But of course, if you want a premium one, because we'll be able to do that. One of the things that we are lacking currently in the market, and you believe with me, this is a big issue, we are lacking benchmark in the market, meaning we only quote external benchmark because we are also not sharing and collaborating with information locally. One of the things I have a vision for HR is that we need to co-create experiences. So we need to share our data. When you do employee engagement and employee survey, experience survey, then you keep it to yourself. It doesn't help anybody. Yes, you can keep the confidential data, but the insight, do you know, only data is protected. Insights are never protected. And I hope you get that right. We have data protection, and we talk about it. I speak in many workshops for them. For that, we have data protection, but we don't have insight protection. Because insight and intelligence can be shared. That's purely learning. You keep your data, yes, but can we share the insights from that data? We are encouraging that kind of process. We lack that measure. Then surveys are done inside also. You do it at your own level. We have no way where we can see manufacturing collaborating with the banking collaborating with the hospitality, and hospitality collaborating with the healthcare sector. We kind of have a, very siloed way of doing this. As HR, we know we are dealing with the people. People are people, whether they are working for manufacturing or banks, people are people. We are encouraging that collaboration currently. And there's an initiative I'm going to explain what we are doing. We also, we have invested in employee improvement, which I said before in our presentation. And we have also very low adoption to HR analytics as HR. We still are not adapting what we call evidence-based decision-making because we need capacity to be built around that. So because of that, and this is something I know we have partnered with IHRM before. For those who participated, I think in 2022, we did this. We had quite almost 13 companies that participated. And we are also again doing it again this year, 2024. We have something we call annual employee experience and engagement survey. If you may want to participate in this, we are going to put the link on the chat. in a while. You can participate in this, and it's going to help you in terms of having evidence-based approach to your employee experience. We'll give you 8 metrics for free, 8 for free, no payment for 8 of the metrics. Then there'll be 9 additional metrics on demand, meaning if you need them. So we are going to share, we can share more information because you have your email. We are going to share this after the webinar. We are going to share with you some details on this process. So we have also some other surveys we are doing, the annual employment, what we call the annual employee experience survey, which I've just described, and also other surveys that are more geared towards professional bodies like IHRM, ISPAC members, IIA members, KISIM members. There's some professional experience and engagement survey we are doing, which is going to take place in the month of March. Now, the free annual experience survey is running between January to April. So if you do it between this time, it's free. If you come to do it in May for your organizations, then of course they're going to be quite a good investment, which of course is quite not that cheap, but it's quite very impactful in terms of value. So the other things, of course, now you may ask me what are kind of the metrics we are going to measure. When it comes to things to do with the freemium, if you do the free one, you're going to do things like employee satisfaction, employee NPS, work environment index, or employee mental wellness, which I know it's a big conversation all over, trust index. These are very interesting one. I know we are doing currently with some few organizations. Quite a very interesting metric, the trust index. Have you ever measured the trust level of the organization? We are going to give that for free. Innovation rating. Are your employee actually contributing in terms of ideas for impact? And then innovation purpose index. Then for the ones that are more kind of premier are the others, there are 9 of them. And then we can be able to give you some free solutions, including coaching for your line managers. So that's something that you can take for grabs, which we are going to share more details subsequently after this webinar. So it's very easy. You just need to express interest, and then we can be able to profile you. We'll administer, we'll do analysis, we'll model. Also, we are going to sign some NDA for confidentiality of data. So that at least, of course, we're also bound by the Data Protection Act. I want to encourage us to join. I'm going to share the link on the chat. We have a purpose-led HR, what do you call it? A HR group, WhatsApp group. Kindly, I don't know whether one of my colleague patients is here, and Lucy, you can share that link. Kindly join the purpose-led HR group. We are going to be sharing some few insights from that group, which is a global group that has members from different regions beyond just Kenya. Good. I think I am done. So I will park there and I allow some few questions before we wind up. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope at least this was insightful. I'll allow a few questions, and also if at all there's any comments, also feel free to bring it on board. We can be able to share that maybe even in subsequent webinars. So any question, kindly? Feel free to unmute, you can raise it up. And if there's also a question on the chat, maybe my colleague can help me pick it up. I'm not sure I can see any. Any question? Oh, I can see Judy Mashari. At least you have raised your hand. Kindly, go ahead. You can pose the question.
Hi, Gabriel. Actually, it's not a question. Just a thank you note. I think you shared a lot of insights and some practical ways to approach it, which is quite impressive. And I know it's quite good to hear practically what are people doing out there and getting real about the HR space and the workspaces. So that is good. Kudos for that.
Thank you so much, Judy, and really appreciate. Look forward to continue expanding this conversation. And kindly also, if at all you have your experiences in your own organizations, share. We want to encourage HR networkings where we can co-create value. This is what Stella is doing, Stella Kalige is doing on the other side, Lucy or Boy is doing something else, or Dual or Call is doing something else. We need to collaborate so that we can be able to learn from each other. That would be very impactful. Otherwise, the world is waiting for HR to actually model workable models, bring workable models in the experience. Now, I'll ask you the last question, and you bear with me, because there's a question I love asking. How many of you here have applied for a CEO position? Don't ask me why I'm asking this question. Eh? How many have applied for a CEO position in the last 2 years? How many of us? You have literally seen a vacancy called CEO vacancy, and you have applied for it. How many of us? I'm waiting to see the list. Anybody? Don't ask me why I'm asking that. Samuel Wadera, thank you. Country manager. Yeah, that's almost a director role. Yeah, that's a senior position. I agree. That's a good one. Thank you so much. It's great to hear somebody has done it. Anybody? COO, Varel, Ugutu. Wow, awesome. This is great. 2 people. Anybody else? What? I think I have seen Samuel. Anybody else who have applied? Purely, and I'm very keen on CEO. The corner office. I know also the C levels for the CEO, CFO, those things are okay. I'm very keen on a CEO. Jeffrey, thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm saying this because, and I want just to bog your mind. Is there a courage? Have you ever seen a courage in the world that trains CEOs? Is there a courage that does CEO training? Is there any? Have you ever seen any? There's none. So anybody can be a CEO. Anybody, and I mean anybody, can be a CEO. So question is, why do we exclude ourselves? And I like having that conversation. And what do you need then to move into that space? Typically, what you need actually is to prepare yourself as an organizational leader, not as a HR leader. As you do what you're doing, we need to make sure at least we are also positioning ourselves as business leaders. And let me use the word organizational because there are some businesses that are not necessarily for profit. So there are more organizations that are more for just, for social impact and all that. We need to be very intentional to position ourselves as organizational leaders. There's a survey we are going to do later, and I hope you can participate. That's why you need to join the purpose-led HR group. We are going to do another survey where we'll be also asking CEOs themselves, will they be willing to hand over the CEO position as successor? Do they consider their HR as the next successor for the next CEO position? We are going to do that survey actually, hopefully from next week, because we done it, I think, in 2019. We want to do a refresher version. You don't want to miss to see what CEOs are saying about you. And you're going to do another webinar and even bring those CEOs here. And we let them tell you themselves what they told us, because we are going to interview CEOs, and also we are going to pick from you yourself in terms of what do you think you require then to become that CEO? It's something that will be very interesting for us to be able to embrace. And our focus is to build capacity for HR to become organizational leaders. You've already done your HR work pretty well, that's okay, but we need to go beyond there. We need to go to the next level, okay? There's a chat that has been put there. You can join the purpose-led HR group. I think there's a link that has been shared there by Lucy, my colleague. Feel free to join there. We're going to share more insights as we continue. So because of time, it's almost heading to 12:30. That means almost 1.5 hours done. Thank you so much for attending this session. If you had not probably come through the pre-registration, make sure you do that so that you can receive some subsequent alerts for the next webinars. We're hoping to do at least some webinars almost weekly or bi-weekly. So kindly make sure at least we have your broadcast, you have your contact in our broadcast list. Otherwise, thank you so much and God bless you. And we look forward to engage right after this in the subsequent sessions. God bless you so much.